Revenge with Karen. Did you really just say we can always invoice the overage later to the CFO of a publicly traded company? Meredith hissed, smile frozen, voice like ice through gritted teeth. Tyler, all jawline and hair gel, smirked like a golden retriever who thought chewing the couch was a power move. Relax, Mir. It's called strategic improvisation. And just like that, Meredith felt something shift. Not just in the room, where the air turned stale with the scent of bad cologne and worse judgment, but deep in her chest, where 15 years of loyalty, missed birthdays, and war-zone red-eye flights for this firm began calcifying into something sharp and surgical. See, Meredith had been the grown-up in the room for over a decade. The fix-it girl. The walking institutional memory. When the firm inherited the Hawthorne account, one of the last old money empires still pretending it wasn't run by two brilliant women and a wine fridge, Meredith turned that brittle, high-maintenance relationship into a bulletproof pipeline. She flew coach. She took notes. She made sure their CFO's daughter got into Northwestern. She didn't just serve the client, she translated them. And now, that legacy was being transitioned to Tyler, man who once CC'd the client's general counsel on a reply-all email titled LOL the old man is slipping. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. 3 weeks before that fumbled call with Tyler, Meredith was still doing what she did best, quietly running the show. She wore black silk blouses and comfortable pumps that cost more than Tyler's watch. She never raised her voice, but somehow always got her way. Even when the firm forgot her birthday, even when Tyler's fast track started moving suspiciously fast. Her office was a shrine of silent victories, framed thank you notes from clients, a crystal paperweight from a now-retired CEO, and a ceramic mug that read I can't fix stupid, but I can invoice it. A gift from her assistant, Claire, after a particularly dumb Q4. Most days were long, meetings that should have been emails that turned into fire drills that somehow involved Dubai. Still, she found time to mentor. She was good at that. Even Tyler, back when he was just another MBA with performance anxiety, used to linger in her doorway, notebook open, asking the right questions. Then one day he stopped asking. He started assuming. And somewhere along the line, the senior partners started nodding along. You're probably thinking, here we go, another office betrayal story. And yeah, it is. But if you think you know where this one's going, keep listening, because Meredith, she doesn't flip the board. She buys the damn game. Oh, and if you're one of the 97% of folks who enjoy these corporate war stories without subscribing, hey, do Meredith a solid. Smash that little subscribe button and throw us a like. It's free, and it tells our tiny overcaffeinated team of storytellers that maybe, just maybe, we should keep leaking these career heist files one episode at a time. Back to the story. Tyler started sitting in on Meredith's client calls uninvited. She played it cool. When he began reshuffling her project decks and claiming them as his, she said nothing. She thought it was a phase with a very punchable face, but still a phase. But then came the Monday. The Monday where Meredith walked into her weekly status meeting and found her name missing from the agenda, where the Hawthorne account was suddenly listed under Tyler Strategic Oversight. No one made eye contact. Later that day, she got a calendar invite from the CFO. Subject line, quick sync. Location, conference room B. Attendees, you, me. The air smelled like printer toner and old Betrayal. The conference room was already cold, but when Meredith stepped inside and saw only one chair across from the CFO, it felt like walking into her own funeral, just with worse coffee. CFO Greg Halpern sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled like a man who practiced his power poses in the mirror. He didn't say hi, didn't offer her a seat, just gestured to the lonely chair like a magician mid-trick. She sat, spine straight, pulse steady. She'd been here before, backroom chats, budget pivots, realignment talks. But this wasn't that. Let's get to it, he said, opening a leather portfolio like it held scripture. There's been a shift in our client alignment strategy. Her jaw tensed. She gave him nothing. Meredith had learned a long time ago, when the room turns, don't chase it, watch it bleed. Hawthorne is being moved under Tyler's purview, just like that, as if he'd said the word Tuesday. She blinked once, slow and surgical. I'm sorry, Greg, did you mean with Tyler's purview? He looked up with that corporate pity smile, the kind men like him save for firing pregnant women and promoting their golf buddies. Need to reallocate resources. It's not personal. You've been a team player for a long time, and we need that energy now more than ever. There it was. The line, be a team player. Corporate code for lie down quietly while we rearrange your corpse. She didn't move, didn't blink again, didn't scream or throw the table. Just sat there while her throat burned with the acid of 15 years' worth of sacrificed weekends, red-eye flights, and missed moments. Project they were yanking? She'd built it from nothing, from cocktail napkins and cold calls. She'd held Hawthorne's COO's hand through her divorce and stayed up till 2 a.m. fixing a budget slide deck during a power outage in Kansas City. Now it belonged to a man who once asked if EBITDA was the one with the pie chart. Greg kept talking, but it turned to static. Streamlining efficiencies. You're not being demoted. Big picture thinking, the lights above hummed. Heartbeat did not. Meredith nodded once, slow and clean, a reflex, not consent. She stood up before he finished. Thanks for the update, she said, voice like stone wrapped in velvet. Let me know if there's anything else. Greg didn't answer. He just looked relieved, like the shark had smiled back. She walked out into the hall and past Tyler, who was adjusting his cufflinks in the reflection of the espresso machine. He didn't even try to hide the grin. You okay, Meredith said, not turning around. It's just business, you know. She stopped. Just for a second. Of course it is, she said. Just make sure the sharks don't smell blood. Then she walked on, all the way back to her office where she locked the door, pulled down the blinds, and stared at the framed thank you letter from Hawthorne's CEO. It read, to Meredith, who doesn't just manage accounts, but makes us feel like we matter. Thank you for being the reason we stay. Something cracked in her chest. A hairline fracture in her patience, her trust, her professional DNA. She didn't cry, didn't scream, just stared until the sun dipped below the skyline and the office emptied out around her. The silence was deafening, and for the first time in years, Meredith wasn't sure if she was still the good soldier. Maybe she was something else now. Maybe she was done waiting for someone else to notice her worth. The next morning, Meredith wore her war paint, red lipstick, double-breasted navy blazer, hair pulled back so tight it might have held her skull together. She showed up 10 minutes early to Tyler's first Hawthorne prep meeting and brought two things, coffee and lowered expectations. She wasn't here to make a scene. Not yet. She was here because she still gave a damn about the client. Because the COO still sent her Christmas cards. Because the CEO once called her from a hospital waiting room to ask if she thought his daughter would forgive him. Because some things matter more than ego. Tyler walked in 5 minutes late, sunglasses on his head, sipping a kale-colored abomination that probably cost $12 and promised inner peace. Meredith, he said, nodding like a barista who forgot your name but remembered your order. Didn't know you'd be joining. Just here to make sure you don't promise them a flying car by Q3, she replied sweetly. He chuckled. You're hilarious. She wasn't joking. Over the next hour, she tried to help. She offered insights, clarified org charts, warned him gently that the Hawthorne board didn't take well to jargon or fluff. He listened with all the focus of a toddler in a tux. And then he took the client call. It was supposed to be a soft check-in. An easy win. Instead, Meredith sat in the corner of the Zoom frame and watched Tyler botch it like a freshman on open mic night. He said they could deliver full integration by August. They couldn't. He said their AI rollout was industry-leading. It was still in beta. He said he'd send over the updated roadmap. There wasn't one. She kept her expression neutral, but her knuckles were white on the armrest. When the call ended, Tyler closed his laptop like he'd just crushed it. Not bad. Depends, she said. Were you aiming for comedy or horror? He frowned. Relax. It's all relationship management. Then maybe stop managing it like a Tinder date. That night, her phone buzzed while she was brushing her teeth. One new message from Charles Dempsey, CEO of Hawthorne. What's going on with your firm? 6 words, not angry. Just tired. Disappointed. Meredith sat on the edge of her bed, toothbrush hanging from her mouth like a white flag. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about bruised pride or unfair reassignments. It was about trust, hers, theirs, the client's, and it was being torched by a man who thought confidence was a substitute for competence. She could keep being the silent fixer, keep patching Tyler's leaks and letting the firm think loyalty meant obedience, or she could protect what she built. Not just the contract, the relationship, the reputation, the one thing they all forgot she owned. By morning, her choice was made. She walked into the office with the same quiet grace she always carried, but underneath the blouse and pearls was a woman who'd just drawn a line in the sand. Tyler thought this was about the client. Greg thought this was about team alignment. But for Meredith, this was personal now, and she was done playing nice. Meredith began the paper trail on a rainy Thursday, because of course it had to rain, kind that bounces sideways off the glass and makes the city feel like a pressure cooker, full of missed deadlines and overpriced sushi. She waited until Tyler left early for his networking happy hour, then slipped into the team folder like a surgeon with a scalpel. Email chains, project logs, vendor invoices, anything with his name on it got its own folder on her encrypted flash drive, labeled innocuously as Q3 revenue projections. The deeper she dug, uglier it got. Expense reports with $600 client entertainment tabs from steakhouses in cities the client hadn't visited. Incomplete deliverables marked approved by Tyler in the internal tracker. One file was literally named V2 Final Thisonforial PPTX. And then there were the emails. Passive-aggressive masterpieces. Per my last 3 emails, let's circle back when Meredith has a chance to align with reality. I'll take it from here. Thanks for your historical context. She didn't print them. She didn't forward them. She just documented, carefully, quietly, with the calm of a woman slowly turning the crank on a guillotine. The final straw came on a Friday afternoon when the client's junior liaison sent over a slide deck riddled with red markup and a polite note that read, "We were under the impression this deliverable would reflect last quarter's strategy, not reinvent it. Can Meredith confirm?" He didn't respond. Instead, she picked up her phone and sent one text, "Lunch next week. Just you and me, off record, my treat." Charles Dempsey replied in under 30 seconds, "Name the time." "I've got thoughts." They met at a tiny bistro Meredith knew Charles liked, private booth in the back, linen napkins that looked too starched to breathe. He looked exhausted in a crisp navy blazer, tie already loosened, kind of tired you earn by pretending to be calm while your house catches fire in slow motion. "Thanks for meeting," she said, sliding a water glass his way. "I should be thanking you. I needed this. You still drink that overpriced Syrah?" She smiled. "Only when I'm considering arson." He laughed, but it faded fast. "Meredith, what the hell is going on over there?" She didn't lie. She didn't spin. She just told the truth, edited, but not diluted. Tyler was the face now. She explained, but his execution was in development. She kept it professional. Still, Charles leaned forward like a man watching someone defuse a bomb. "We were going to give you guys our new expansion portfolio," he said. "All of it. Now we're rethinking." There it was. The quiet implosion behind the boardroom curtain. "What would it take," he asked carefully, "for you to stay involved?" Meredith didn't answer. Not yet. But in that moment, the game officially began. She got home that night, she made a list. Not of enemies, of leverage points. Project timelines, compliance gaps, client pain points. Names of people who owed her favors, legal, ops, even payroll. This wasn't revenge. It was containment. She wasn't trying to ruin the firm. Not yet. She just wanted to survive the fire long enough to walk out with what was hers. And maybe light a match or two on the way out. It started with a random ping on LinkedIn from an old war buddy. Maya Patel, former in-house counsel turned burnout refugee, now freelancing legal reviews from a cabin in Vermont with 2 goats and a side hustle in elderflower gin. "Hey, you still surviving the circus?" Heard whispers from Tyler's end. "Want to chat?" Meredith didn't need to be asked twice. They hopped on a call that night. Maya sounded the same, dry wit, surgical clarity, always one espresso shot away from scorched earth. Meredith filled her in, sparing no detail. Maya didn't gasp, didn't even sigh. She just hummed. "Let me guess," Maya said. "They did the handoff without a signed transfer." Meredith blinked. "They said it was handled." "Sure," Maya snorted. "Handled like a toddler handles a chainsaw." Then came the twist. If Hawthorne never signed the formal transition documents, and I mean actually signed them, then technically, firm has no binding claim to the ongoing relationship. And if you're no longer employed by the firm, Meredith leaned in. Then what? Then you could engage them directly, post-termination, especially if you establish yourself as an independent consultant. Legally clean, no conflict, no strings. Meredith's heart did something it hadn't done in weeks. It skipped. "You're saying I could lock in Hawthorne myself?" Maya's voice dropped to a conspiratorial murmur. "I'm saying if you time it right, file the right paperwork, and keep your tracks clean, then yeah. You could walk out with the crown jewel and no lawsuit hanging off your heels." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it buzzed. For the first time since Greg's be a team player speech, Meredith didn't feel cornered. She felt armed. After the call, she sat at her kitchen counter, lit a candle she didn't even like, something lavender and expensive, and opened her laptop. Started researching business license forms, consulting agreements, EIN numbers, branding packages. By midnight, Meredith Lang Strategies, LLC existed on paper. The next morning, she requested her full HR personnel file for insurance documentation. They emailed it within an hour. She flagged a clause in her contract: no non-compete on termination unless severance is accepted. Good. She wouldn't be accepting anything. Started taking her personal belongings home in batches: one picture frame, one book, one USB drive. Slow enough not to trigger suspicion. Fast enough to be gone when it mattered. She met Charles again, this time for coffee. No wine, no smiles. Would your board consider retaining me directly? She asked, eyes sharp. Charles didn't blink. Would you want the whole account or just the strategy division? She didn't answer. Not yet. But inside her chest, something had shifted. That ache of betrayal? It was now something electric, dangerous, focused. Meredith had seen the trap they built. Now she was laying blueprints for her own door out. No more fixing their messes. No more coaching toddlers in expensive suits. No more watching men like Tyler fumble her legacy while the firm applauded the freefall. This time, she wasn't just leaving. She was taking everything they thought was theirs. The office smelled different that Monday. Not just the HVAC's recycled despair, or the microwaved sadness from someone's lean cuisine. No, this was the scent of change. That thick, static-charged tension when everyone starts speaking in lower voices and checking Slack twice before hitting send. Restructuring. The word moved like poison gas, colorless, odorless, deadly. Meredith heard it first from Claire, her assistant-turned-confidante, who whispered it over the copier while pretending to refill paper trays. Greg met with legal twice last week, and payroll blocked off Friday afternoon. They're calling it a strategic realignment. Translation: heads were going to roll. Claire gave her a look, worried but impressed. You gonna take the severance if they offer? Meredith just smiled. Depends on how generous they're feeling, and how stupid. Behind that smile was a woman who hadn't slept in days, but had instead been orchestrating her exit like a symphony. Wasn't just waiting to be fired, she was preparing to be freed. She looped Meyer in on every draft of her consulting agreement with Hawthorne, combing every clause for landmines. She secured a business attorney in case things went nuclear. She even booked a session with a media consultant, not for vanity, but for control. If the board tried to spin her departure, she'd be ready with a counter-narrative so polished it could cut glass. And then came the Wednesday meeting. It was supposed to be a routine project sync. Just Meredith, Tyler, 2 analysts, and a half-board marketing liaison. Tyler strutted in like a man about to win an imaginary Oscar, all swagger and smug. And before anyone had even opened a spreadsheet, he struck. So, he began, pacing like a community college drama professor. There's been concern over some of the messaging sent to Hawthorne recently. Language that doesn't reflect our updated positioning. I don't want to name names, but everyone looked at Meredith. She didn't blink. Just calmly flipped her notepad to the last page and wrote in slow, looping letters, "Don't interrupt a man mid-self-destruction." She let him finish. Let him imply. Let him hang himself with words dipped in plausible deniability. Then she stood. "I appreciate the feedback, Tyler," she said, voice so even it almost hummed. "I'll make sure any communication going forward meets your positioning." He smirked, misreading her restraint as submission. But something in the room changed. One of the analysts, a smart kid named Jordan, glanced at her like he was seeing the shift too, like he realized Meredith wasn't backing down. She was marking the moment. After the meeting, she walked to the HR floor and handed in her updated emergency contact form, subtly including her new business entity under affiliations. Just enough to timestamp the move, just enough to dare them to try. Thursday morning, Claire slipped her a whisper, "You're on the list." Friday, 3:15, perfect. That afternoon, Meredith received a final version of her contract from Hawthorne. 3 years, 7-figure deal, exclusivity clause, signed by every relevant stakeholder. All it needed was her signature. She waited, not because she had doubts, but because she wanted the timing to be poetic. Let them fire her. Let them offer a generous package for her silence. She had no use for hush money. She had the one thing they couldn't buy back once it was gone: the client, the relationship, the future they never saw coming. And Tyler, he was still posting thought leadership quotes on LinkedIn like a human word art generator. She would let him burn, but not yet. The match was in her hand. She was just waiting for Friday. Friday began with a silence that felt rehearsed. Office was unusually still, as if even the air vents were holding their breath. Desks that were normally cluttered with half-drunk coffees and half-hearted optimism had been wiped clean. No one made eye contact. Slack channels were quiet. It was the digital equivalent of scattering when someone yells incoming. At 8:03 a.m., Meredith opened her laptop and clicked the PDF. Exclusive Strategic Advisory Agreement, Hawthorne Group and Meredith Lang Strategies, LLC. She reviewed every clause again. She already knew it by heart, but this time she wanted the moment to feel real. She clicked the signature field, typed her name, dated it. Then she printed 2 copies on her home printer, one for her files, one for what she had planned. The paper was still warm when she slid it into the manila envelope. No ribbon, no dramatics, just weight, paper, and power. She clipped her badge to her blazer and walked into that office like she had for 15 years, except this time, something fundamental had shifted. Her posture hadn't changed. Her expression was as calm as ever, but beneath it all, she was a woman who no longer needed anything from this place. At 10:42 a.m., the calendar ping arrived, urgent meeting, HR plus CFO location. 12th floor glass conference room attendees, Meredith Lang, Greg Halpern, Lane from HR. It didn't say what it was about, it didn't need to. Claire raised her eyebrows from across the hall as Meredith passed. Want me to fake a power outage? Meredith smirked. No need. I brought my own blackout. The conference room was a familiar theater of corporate executions. Glass walls, generic artwork, one pitcher of water, and the subtle stench of neutered authority. Greg was already seated, flipping through what looked like performance review summaries, like a man preparing for ritual sacrifice. Elaine from HR smiled the way dental assistants do right before they numb your gums. Thanks for making time, Greg said, gesturing to the chair across from him like a school principal about to tell you your hamster died. Meredith didn't sit yet. She reached into her bag and placed the sealed envelope on the table. Greg blinked. Before we get into anything, he said smoothly, you'll want to see this. He opened it slowly. His eyes flicked across the header. Then the first clause, then the signature. He stopped reading after the second page. Meredith could tell by the way his lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Elaine leaned over to glance. She didn't hide the sudden hitch in her breath. Greg looked up, mouth half open like he was searching for a sentence and finding only vowels. You signed with Hawthorne? He asked, voice struggling to stay even. No, Meredith said, sitting down now. They signed with me. Her tone was calm, eerily so, like the eye of a storm that had studied every map and knew exactly where to land. Greg fumbled. You realize this creates a conflict. There's no conflict, she cut in. My contract with the firm ends today. Your decision, not mine. As of this moment, I'm not bound by non-compete clauses. You made sure of that. Elaine swallowed. Didn't accept the severance package. Meredith smiled like a woman who'd finally stopped apologizing. No, I accepted my value. They sat in silence. Greg's hands hovered over the papers like he could somehow reverse time with enough pressure. She leaned forward, elbows on the glass. You underestimated me, Greg. That's fine. Most men in this building do. But you made one fatal mistake. His voice cracked. What's that? Thought I'd stay loyal to the building after it set itself on fire. She stood, smoothed her jacket. The game was over. But the fallout? That was just beginning. The door clicked shut behind her. Greg didn't waste time with pleasantries. He leaned back in his chair, confidence oozing off him like a politician mid-scandal press conference. Tyler was already seated to his right, freshly shaved, a little too eager, like a kid who thinks he's finally getting the keys to Dad's truck. Lane from HR hovered like a background character, trying not to breathe too loudly. Greg folded his hands and gave her that insufferable smile, the one she used to think meant mentorship. Now she knew better. Meredith, he said slowly, like the name tasted sour, we've given this some thought. A transition of this nature should be smooth, cooperative, civil. She didn't respond. Just waited. We've decided, he continued, that for the sake of client continuity, Hawthorne needs to remain with the firm. So here's how this is going to work. He paused for drama. Tyler adjusted his cuffs. You're going to return the client. He leaned forward, smugness sharpening his tone, or you're done. A beat of silence. Meredith tilted her head slightly, like she was listening to a radio signal no one else could hear. Then, without breaking eye contact, she reached into her bag and retrieved the envelope again. Clean, uncreased, deliberate. She placed it gently on the table and slid it across the polished wood. Greg's smirk faltered. Tyler shifted in his seat. Elaine blinked like someone who just realized they wandered into the wrong room. Greg picked up the envelope and opened it like it might bite, and it did. His eyes scanned the first line, exclusive strategic consulting agreement, Hawthorne Group and Meredith Lang Strategies, LLC. Then, the signature page. Then the company seal. His jaw clenched. His voice cracked. Anyway, you signed them. Meredith leaned back, slow and graceful, like a curtain falling after the final act. You're already too late. Tyler made a noise like a cat choking on drywall. Wait, what is this? You went around us, she turned to him. I didn't go around anyone, Tyler. I stepped out of the building you set on fire and walked into a better one. Elaine tried to find her footing. But that client was under our corporate umbrella. Never signed the transfer agreement, Meredith said coolly. The relationship was never legally reassigned, which means the client made their own decision, one your firm forced them into with incompetence and neglect. Greg stood now, trying to reclaim the table. You've created a conflict of interest. No, she said, standing as well. I created a lifeboat. Silence. Utter, complete silence. All the years of condescension, all the head pats disguised as feedback, all the whispered dismissals behind closed doors, they collapsed in that moment like a bad deck of cards in a windstorm. Meredith gave them one last look, not with gloating, but with calm finality. This could have gone differently, she said, but you taught me something. Greg stared hollow. She turned for the door. Next time you underestimate a woman, make sure she's not holding the exit strategy in her back pocket. Within 48 hours, Hawthorne's press release hit the wires. Hawthorne Group appoints Meredith Lang as exclusive lead strategist. 3 sentences, plain as toast, but the market read between the lines. A Fortune 500 had walked, not shuffled, walked, away from one of the city's oldest advisory firms to follow a single woman out the door. Phones at the firm lit up like a cheap casino. Stakeholders wanted answers, numbers, explanations that didn't sound like children blaming the dog. Greg never made it to the Monday earnings call. Over the weekend, an emergency board session stretched into dawn. By sunrise, the internal memo read, Greg Halpern has elected to retire effective immediately to pursue personal interests. Translation. Escorted out before the coffee was brewed. Tyler's fate took longer only because HR needed time to downgrade his title, revoke his corporate Amex, reassign his glass-walled corner office to facilities for storage. He walked out carrying a single banker's box and the fragile hope that LinkedIn blurbs still count as experience. Meanwhile, Meredith's world expanded. Her new LLC email pinged nonstop. CEOs she'd once rescued from budget cliffs, CFOs who remembered quiet midnight calls solved by her calm voice. If you're taking new clients, we'd love to discuss a retainer. Hawthorne wired her first quarterly payment, the amount Greg used to dangle as a year-end bonus, and added a handwritten note from Charles. Welcome home. Across town, the firm's senior partners gathered in a mahogany boardroom, spreadsheets bleeding red. Forecasts showed a yawning hole where Hawthorne revenue once lived, plus the ripple effect of other wary accounts now reviewing their options. Every slide ended with some variation of impact, material. Confidence eroded. Someone whispered that maybe they should have treated Meredith like an asset instead of overhead. Nobody answered. Meredith watched the fallout from a sunlit co-working loft with real plants and no fluorescent hum. She'd rented the space for a month, enough time to design her own office exactly the way she wanted. No cubicles, no beige. Aya dialed in from her goat-dotted Vermont porch to toast the victory with a mug of gin disguised as tea. Claire, liberated from the copper trenches, accepted Meredith's offer to become chief of staff and showed up wearing sneakers instead of compliance heels. Together, they drafted onboarding docs, brand guidelines, a culture manifesto that banned jargon like circle back and synergy. Laughter became the default soundtrack. On Tuesday, financial columnist ran a feature titled The Consultant Who Outplayed the Firm. The photo was candid, Meredith on a city balcony, hair loose, half smile like she knew something the skyscrapers didn't. The article praised surgical foresight, client-first ethics, and a masterclass in walking away with the crown jewels. She forwarded it to Claire with a single line. Frame this for the lobby we haven't leased yet. She didn't gloat, didn't stalk Greg's quiet LinkedIn update or Tyler's sudden pivot to motivational quotes about resilience. She simply noted the lesson: underestimate no one, especially the quiet ones keeping the lights on. When the firm's headhunter called, toned sheepish, just exploring possibilities, she thanked him politely and hung up before he finished the pitch. Late that night, alone in her new space, Meredith opened the office window and let the city's summer hum drift in. No badge tugging at her suit collar, no after-hours ping demanding she be a team player. Just clear air and the steady glow of everything she'd claimed. Power wasn't a corner office or a title someone could stripe away. It was the ability to choose where you stand and who gets to stand with you. She took a breath, clicked send on a proposal for her second client, and watched the file disappear into the ether. Behind her, the skyline pulsed, bridges burning somewhere in the distance, forecasts smoldering. Ahead, the horizon looked wide open and wonderfully flammable. I have to admit, seeing Meredith flip the script so quietly was a masterclass in knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone write your ending for you. In a world where loyalty's often taken for granted, her story is a sharp reminder. Sometimes, the best power move is to build your own door and walk right through it. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.